Welcome everyone, Costin here with my review of Halo Infinite, the first Halo game, the first main Halo game rather, to have a simultaneous PC release as on console, which is a pretty big deal. I played Halo 1 on PC, Halo 2 on PC, and then, well, we didn't have anything to do for quite a long time, with the exception of course, Halo Wars 1 and 2. So I am a fan of Halo, I just haven't played the other games because, well, Microsoft stopped caring about releasing them on PC simultaneously until this one. And sure, although we've gotten every Halo game with the exception of 5 on PC, and you can play them all pretty cheaply through the Game Pass, I haven't done so just yet. I mean, I've touched a bit of Reach, I've touched a bit of Free, but I haven't gotten to fully playing those games. I'm making this point because Halo Infinite is pretty much a soft reboot of the series. And for someone who hasn't kept up with all that the series has to offer, I do have some thoughts on this subject. First off, although I haven't played those games, I have watched, of course, plenty of the brilliant cinematics that they've had in those games. I'm obviously not up to date on all the details, but I do know a good amount of it. And here's how I feel about the reboot. The decision to reboot it from a story level, but not just a story, from an artistic level. And you can see that clearly with how Master Chief's armor looks compared to, say, 4 and 5. From all levels, I think I'm somewhat disappointed. I understand that Halo 4 and especially Halo 5 did not have a very welcome reception from the Halo community, especially story-wise. But for free to just basically say, yeah, you know, all that, not really all that relevant. I mean, the story technically continues after Halo 5, but the relevance of the story is pretty much non-existent. I mean, the only thing that matters from the main Halo series from 4 and 5 is Cortana went fucking insane, and you are meant to stop her. In fact, Halo Wars 2, because of the introduction of the Banished, has significantly more relevance to the story of Halo Infinite than Halo 4 and 5 do. Again, I'm not saying that there's no relevance whatsoever. There are plenty of audio logs, there's plenty of codex entries, so to speak, about the events of the previous games and about things that have happened since then. But when you play the game, when you're looking at the main dialogue, when the main cinematics, what they're talking about, how they're talking about that, the only things you really need to care about in Halo Infinite, Cortana went insane, Chief was meant to stop her, he didn't succeed, and there's also this new force of Banished under Aatrox. I'd say the only thing that anyone needs to know from previous Halo games is they want to watch Aatrox's intro cinematic in Halo Wars 2. That's it. Just so you know who the hell the Banished are and how they became so powerful. But even then, we don't have all the answers. And point of fact, from a story perspective, I do feel very strongly that we're missing the entire story content of a full game. Like, it's like, oh, this is 6 months after Master Chief was lost the fight with Aatrox. The UNSC, the Infinity, their prize ship, their capital ship, the Pride of the Navy, got destroyed, and the remnants of the crew have been fighting a losing battle against Banished. Then Master Chief is found, and he finds the weapon, which is basically Cortana 2.0. They're not even trying to pretend the weapon isn't Cortana 2.0. She pretty much is Cortana 2.0. Though how that is actually revealed in the game, and it takes you a very long time to actually have full confirmation of that, is a different story. And actually, I think it's pretty well handled. Though, again, I feel abandoning everything that 4, 5, and even 100 games had done, just abandoning it for the sake of redoing a plotline, putting Master Chief on a Halo, and a new one, a completely new one, wasn't necessarily the best idea. It just feels jarring. Even for someone like me. Again, I haven't played 4, I haven't played 5, I haven't played 3 even, or ODST, and it still feels pretty jarring for me personally to see this. I mean, even when you're thinking about just the Banished, what exactly happened with that Halo ring that was launched at the end of Halo Wars 2? Because that was supposed to be a big deal. Well, apparently it didn't matter. So they abandoned every major plotline. They do have the Banished, but we don't have Aatrox. We have, like, apparently his mentor, who is dying for whatever reason. He's leading them. And we don't have a full understanding of exactly what we're dealing here. We're fighting the Banished because reasons, which aren't fully explained for a very, very long time. Well, we're fighting the Banished because they attacked the UNSC, and we're just fighting back, and we're trying to stop them from doing whatever the hell they're doing. We don't even know what they're trying to do. We just have to fight them because they're the bad guys, and we have to stop them. That just doesn't work all that well. I mean, Halo Wars 2, where they introduced the Banished, we got the clear-cut reason, or we had the pre-understandable reason why the hell we were fighting Banished. The reason we're fighting the Banished is, oh, they just hate humanity and want to wipe us out. Another thing to talk about when we're thinking about the reboot and the story is, although you have plenty of Marines, plenty of human characters, their relevance might as well be zero. They're a gameplay gimmick. They have zero relevance when it comes to story. From a story perspective, the only characters that might as well exist in the entire game are the pilot, the weapon, and chief. That's it. And I'm using those names because even though they do have names, we only find the pilot's name at the very end of the game, and the weapon, we never find out her full name, or she doesn't get to choose her name. And then we go on a story of really exploration. I think they're trying to harken back to Halo 1. I'm not sure they're succeeding. With all that said, I don't believe it's a bad game or a bad story. It's just a jarring experience to go through it and just have like a kind of story where you're not fully understanding what's going on. Even when you're playing until the end, you're not fully comprehending exactly what's going on. Maybe a future game. And they're using Halo Infinite as, I guess, a jumping point for a new series. Like, they've rebooted the series, they've restarted the series, and now we are going to have new games in the Halo series following the conclusion of Halo Infinite. Jarring experience, to be honest. Jarring storytelling, honestly. And I think that if they wanted to abandon everything that they had done in both Halo 4 and 5 in this game, they could have done it in a much better way. But I guess it just shows how much they screwed up in the past, I suppose, and how they felt about their own games, the ones that they had built, the ones they had previously built. And maybe it's also thinking, oh, just start from scratch, go with the atmosphere of Halo 1, and that's going to work. And then moving on to gameplay. Well, the gameplay can be split in two major sections. We have the open world stuff, which is very Far Cry-esque style of gameplay. And then we have the main story missions, which are much more linear, and you're generally going to be going in some installation and have very limited options. First off, Halo trying to emulate Far Cry doesn't quite work because it's not a Far Cry game. It's not a Ubisoft game. I mean, it gets the job done. The open world is probably the best gameplay part of the game, the most enjoyable part of the game. You go around hunting Banished, freeing Marines, getting objectives, getting all that, exploring. And it's a joy to actually explore this world. Then you get special weapons, deal with certain named mobs, and get their special weapons that you can then use further on. And you unlock more and more stuff. Weapons, Marines, tanks. Hey, you want the fucking Scorpion tank? Hey, you can get it. You can get it at a Ford operating base. So that aspect of the game is pretty decently done. The main missions, however, not so much. I mean, you have a game where what really makes it work is the flexibility around the open world, flexibility of movement. You have a grapple hook, you have various abilities, you have various vehicles, and then you have the majority of the main story missions, which many of them end up in a situation where you feel far more limited, especially the missions where you're going in some installation and you're just going down some deep, dark tunnel. That is not a great experience. And it actually takes away from enjoying even the open world, because those special weapons that I talked about in the open world, yeah, you can carry them through probably an entire mission, though ammo is a bit of an issue. You can carry them through the entirety of those missions. You will run out of ammo, so you're gonna have to either switch to some weapons and hope the special weapon you're using doesn't disappear. I've had that happen. Or you just make do with the guns that the game provides you in these missions, which is like, well, what's the damn point of the open world system if I'm not going to use the rewards that I'm being granted for putting in all that grindy effort? Like, what's the damn point? In the main story, there's a huge disconnect between the open world gameplay and the main mission gameplay in large tracks of the game, especially at the very end of it when you're going through three missions worth of tunnels, and you're obviously not going to carry the equipment you start with through all of that, and that's annoying. Like, you have so much you can unlock: marines, tanks, vehicles, and all that, and none of that fucking matters as in the main story, in many of the main story missions. They can matter in some of them, absolutely. You can make use of these tools in some of them, maybe quite a few of them, but in other parts, you are not going to use all your hard work in the open world is going to mean squat. And that is a jarring experience. They should have done a better job integrating that the things that you're unlocking in the open world and main story give you the tools that you spend so much time working on. But on top of that, the way they handle difficulty is just annoying. Many enemies, they're not so frustrating to deal with. You can kill them pretty reasonably well, and you just use certain weapons that are effective at those kind of enemy types. Like runs will die quickly, the birds will die quickly. The issue are the brutes and their insane fucking armor and shield. The elites, they have shields. They're pretty tough, but you can break through those shields. They'll die pretty quickly once you take their shield down. The brutes not only have shields, but they also have thick fucking armor. And you know what's fun? Dealing with bullet spongy enemies, shooting them constantly, not knowing whether or not you're actually making any difference, because you won't see this reflected in their HP bar until you actually take down their shields and armor. And many times you won't necessarily see what their shield values or what their armor values or their HP values. You can get an upgrade for your scanner to see that, and bosses will show this, but it is a pretty frustrating experience. And then you have the bosses on Legendary just one-shotting the crap out of you with their melee attacks in particular, and you running around like a bloody chicken throwing shit at them. Yeah, bosses in first-person shooters can work well. They're trying to copy Doom, I feel, like the recent Doom games. They're really trying to copy the recent Doom games in this title, combining it with a decent dose of Far Cry in the open world, and then Halo stuff, like the linear missions in particular. They're trying to combine all that, and it just doesn't really work that well. The open world game experience is the best part of the game, but it's kind of ruined by the linear missions with the annoying, frustrating fucking bosses that are very bullet spongy. Now, you could say, oh, play on a lower difficulty. Okay, sure. Slaughtering enemies with ease is certainly a great gameplay experience. I do have an issue with a lot of difficulty levels in a lot of games. I feel Halo Infinite is on the worst end of things when it comes to difficulty, higher difficulties. You will die pretty quickly on Legendary, but that's not the problem. The problem is just how much bullshit you get thrown against. I mean, it is fun when you when towards the end of the game, because of all the upgrades you've acquired, all the tools you've acquired, you can slaughter 20, 30 enemies. You enter a room with 20, 30 enemies, and you're not thinking, oh shit, I'm fucked. You're thinking, it's like, well, I'm just gonna one-shot these bastards with a bloody grenade or a couple of the weapons and put down a shield, so I'm not gonna take a lot of damage. That can feel great. It feels worth the effort, but that is, however, ruined when you do encounter the enemies that just won't go down until you're emptying multiple magazines worth of ammunition or using heavy weaponry. I do feel the game suffers from the fact that you only have 2 weapon slots. If you're trying to copy Doom, then understand there's a reason why in Doom you have multiple weapon slots, because the situation you might be faced is going to vary. It is going to change what type of weapon you're going to use quite a bit. Just having to run around the entire arena, switching weapons on the fly for different types of enemies, not exactly the greatest experience, because you have to pick them up, you have to go to armor racks or weapon racks, pick those weapons up. And again, just not overall a great gameplay experience in those main missions. Open world, kind of fun, and that's kind of perhaps the overall impression I had of Halo Infinite. It's kind of fun, it's pretty decent. It does have frustrating elements. It's not the worst game I've played. It's probably not even the worst Halo game. It's not annoying, or it doesn't piss me off. It doesn't piss me off with its story decisions. But I do feel they could have done a lot more with it. But they decided not to. In some ways, I guess you could say they decide to play it safe. They decide to be, I don't know, as non-controversial as possible. With this particular title, they have a limited cast of characters, and although there is some character development and there are some really good moments between these characters, it just doesn't feel enough as I see it. And that's where I stand on Halo Infinite. A decent enough effort, I suppose, but not enough. Not exactly what I was expecting or what I was hoping for. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.